1961 Ford Triumph at Le Mans was definitely better than 1960, where their cars had suffered all sorts of problems, one of which was stretching valves, but they decided to go back in 1961 and have another go. And the film that they were looking at was shot by the Triumph film unit. They had a very good and very successful film unit, did a lot of filming of racing and rallying, and as you can see from the film, pretty even-handed handling of the race. They didn't just show triumphs, I mean they showed pretty well everything else as well, so it's a really well-rounded film of the 1961 Le Mans. Triumph had a full factory team. The TR3A was just coming to the end of its production, but they were still to go on making TR4s right through until 1967, and they had made a lot of those, but they all struggled through to the finish. They still weren't exactly setting the track alight with speed, but it was an interesting race, 1961, because it saw the entry for the first time ever of a rear-engine Ferrari in the Le Mans 24-hour race.
If in the ancient world all roads led to Rome, then in the modern world of high-speed transport, all roads should lead to the Roman city of Le Mans. Certainly they do, for the manufacturer prepared to undertake, in the full glare of world publicity, the most exacting sports and grand touring car race in the international calendar. In 1961, the Triumph team from Coventry in England made good its promise of the previous year and returned to Le Mans. Apart from its duration of 24 merciless hours, the regulations which govern Le Mans make it a technical proving ground second to none, from which the everyday motorist eventually reaps the benefit. Matters of weight, streamlining and fuel consumption are the practical realities of this race, and the scrutineers will accept nothing on face value. All cars must run on the common fuel supplied, and every gallon used will be meticulously recorded throughout the race. From Porsche of Germany comes an assortment of engine capacities. Lotus of England introduce a Coventry Climax engine of only 750 cc's. Ferrari of Italy goes for the big 3 litres, but as yet the drivers have other things on hand. The Triumph's works team of 3 cars is once again managed by Ken Richardson, who drives number 27, the TR, to be shared by Keith Balasat and Peter Bolton, to the pit. Now months of patient effort in the drawing office, on the factory floor and in the test house have reached fruition. The 1961 racing prototypes are ready. Naturally, old friends and neighbours have come along for the christening. Norman Garrett, Peter Harper, Peter Jopp and their Sunbeam Alpines. Entered by the Écurie Casse, this 2.5-litre Cooper. Twice in the past, their Jaguars have won for Scotland. But beyond question, the strongest bid to cover the greatest distance in the 24 hours comes from CFAC Ferrari. 4 works cars, no less than 8 private entries. Success depends upon the proper functioning of every single component, and by no means least important are the windscreen wipers on this very high-speed road circuit. The French call their beloved little DBs the tanks, but one of the problems of advanced aerodynamics is how to get in. The 3 Triumphs were improved versions of the experimental cars which had shown such promise the previous year. Designated the TRS, their specification includes twin overhead camshaft 4-cylinder engine of 1985 cc's, developing some 150 brake horsepower, disc brakes all round, and a separate chassis carrying reinforced glass fiber bodywork. In practice, they had been timed at 140 miles an hour down the Mulsanne Straight. Jim Clark in the Border Reivers Aston Martin makes a brilliant start. Behind him, Roy Salvadori, then the Grand Touring Astons and Sterling Moss with the blue GT Ferrari. At the S's, it's Clark and Salvadori, then Ginther's Works Ferrari moving up, the French Aston, Moss, Jean de Bien's Ferrari. Then the rest of the field with Les Leston in number 26 leading the 3 TRs. The 3-litre Healy and the 750 Lotus are slow away, and the pit personnel regroup for their 24-hour vigil. First time round, it's Ginther's experimental 2.4 leading Jean de Bien's 3-litre Ferrari. At the S's, Jim Clark is still third. Moss has his lights on, and Hanscon on the Cunningham Maserati is ahead of Roy Salvadori. Les Leston and Peter Bolton are sticking close together in their triumphs. But at the S's, watch for number 17, the Rodriguez brothers Ferrari, tearing through the field after a poor start. In the Triumph pit, Mike Rothschild anxiously watches for his partner Marcel Becard. Leston and Bolton weave through the field in close company, and Becard's TR number 25 is not far behind. The Triumphs are running to a plan. With a target average of over 91 miles an hour to make good, they are already gaining handsomely with every lap. At Tertre Rouge and the start of the straight, Mike Parks on the third works Ferrari momentarily splits the Triumph trio. Now it's Jean de Bien, Ginther and the Rodriguez boys. 3 Ferraris in the lead. The Triumph drivers, Peter Bolton, Les Leston and Marcel Becard, are all old hands at Le Mans. They well know the critical importance of this opening phase. Lapping steadily at 101 miles an hour, they neither get involved in pointless personal duels nor waste time being balked by slower machinery. The Rodriguez Ferrari number 17 is a private entry from the North American racing team, and now it heads the works cars in this furious battle for the lead. The first routine stop, Walter Hanscon with the Cunningham Maserati 3-litre, the principal hope of the United States. Hanscon retains the wheel after refueling.
In that same period of time, of course, the cars have changed enormously, just like they have in all forms of motorsport, not just motorsport, but everyday driving as well. And the cars have become much more sophisticated, much more powerful, much more economical, and of course a lot faster. If we went back, I mean the current lap record stands at around about 146 miles an hour, with the Porsche curves, with the chicanes, and I would hazard a guess that if you went back to the circuit that I raced on in 1962 with last year's winning Audi, it would probably have lapped at around about 170, 180 miles an hour, probably average, because it would have slowed down at Mulsanne corner, it would have slowed down Arnage, and everywhere else the thing would have been just absolutely awesome.
The first splash of rain greets the relief drivers at Tertre Rouge, and the sharp right-hander is instantly treacherous. Immediate action by the marshal, but for Walter Hanscon and the leading Cunningham Maserati, all is lost when lying fifth. Mind you, for a man reported to have a fractured arm, Hanscon, though blooded, seems remarkably unbowed. But it's a sad blow for Briggs Cunningham, whose Le Mans efforts seem to win little more than admiration. Number 18, Sterling Moss, now leads the Grand Touring cars, lying fourth. And this time it's Baghetti's works Ferrari who temporarily breaks up the Triumph trio. Hanscon's Maserati serves as a reminder that motor racing is dangerous, and the wet circuit is now a skating rink. The yellow danger warning comes as no surprise. The fast right-hander after the pits has claimed another victim. Bruce Halford injured and the Ecos Cooper written off. But at the pits, business as usual. Team manager Norman Garrett and timekeeper Jackie Rees grimly watched the Hopkirk Jock Alpine through its refueling stop. In fact, this car is unfortunately later to be disqualified under the rigid technical regulations. But in comes the other Alpine, driven by the rally partnership of Peter Harper and Peter Proctor. Instantly, the drivers exchange limericks. Now, the first breath of anxiety in the Triumph pit. Slaughtermarker is overdue. In he comes to report misfiring to Ken Richardson. The spare coil, already switched in by Slaughtermarker, is checked, but Richardson decides to use the stop for a driver change anyway. Les Leston is sent back into the race. Now Phil Hill has taken over number 10 and struggles to stay ahead of Rodriguez. But here's a nasty moment for Meres. Rain from the heavy grey skies induces a premature dusk as the Rodriguez Ferrari laps for the first time the Moss and Graham Hill Berlinetta. And after 4 hours of racing, the saloon lies fifth with 54 laps. The Works Ferraris are first, third and fourth. Rodriguez second, 1¼ minutes behind Phil Hill. After 12 hours of racing, Le Mans is almost lonely. But at 5 a.m., first light. The crowd begins to stir and realizes that, incredibly, this race is only just past the halfway stage. The Rodriguez boys are in the lead by 16 seconds, and the snarling exhausts sound a triumphant reveille. Back in the stands, the spectators count their chickens. That was number 27, there's number 25, and there's 26. So the Triumph team is still intact. And what's more, Peter Bolton and Keith Balasat now lie 16th in general classification. Becker and Rothschild are 17th, and Leston and Slaughtermarker are 19th and gradually closing up. Only 4 of the 8 GT Ferraris are left. But these two, Noble and Bianchi, are fighting each other for 6th place and the Grand Touring lead. Peter Bolton and Keith Balasat are brilliantly paired, but probably the hero of the hour is Les Leston. A leg muscle torn at the start is causing him excruciating pain with every move. But as Balasat calmly takes over number 27 at 7 a.m., there's drama down the road. The Rodriguez car has lost almost 20 minutes at its pit. The electrical trouble, which had temporarily slowed Slaughtermarker the night before, has dropped the Mexicans from 1st to 4th place, 5 laps behind the leaders. Now down in the S's, further drama. The Beckard-Rothschild Triumph suddenly spurts oil smoke, but the engine sounds clean enough. At once, Mike Rothschild is called into the pits, where his arrival is anxiously awaited. Quickly, the trouble is diagnosed. The oil seal on the crankshaft chain case has failed, and oil is seeping onto the hot exhaust pipe. So what, says Mike? So you can get in and drive it, and we'll keep our fingers crossed. Meantime, the 2.5-litre Cunningham Maserati, with Briggs himself and Kimberley at the wheel, is plying steadily on. The blue and white American cars are popular at the circuit, and the fact that an American driver, Phil Hill, now shares the leading car is in no small measure due to the sporting determination of Briggs Cunningham, who pioneered this European trail for his countrymen. Rodriguez, about to take Mike Parks, is now only 3 laps behind the leader and gaining fast, while others lose slowly. The surviving Sunbeam is on its way to the Thermal Efficiency Award, though well behind the Triumphs. But the Porsches, which had been the TR's most serious challenge for the team prize, now run into trouble. The 1700 of Joachim Bonnier and Dan Gurney has its flywheel come adrift. The bearded Bonnier has his coat on in readiness to go home, but first there must be a thorough investigation on the spot. Achtung, alles ist nicht in Ordnung. Eventually, the Porsche of LeMans and Bonn goes out again, though now behind the Triumph of Bolton and Balisette. Once again, the Pabst Thompson 3-litre Cunningham Maserati is in for fuel. The rear-engine V12 Type 63 has twice changed all its 24 spark plugs, and the drivers too seem to be having some rear-end trouble. Maybe the seat could do with a little more padding, but at least the timekeeper has a proper windscreen. Anyway, the car is still running strongly and is destined to finish a very gallant fourth. Suddenly, with only 2 hours to go, in comes Pedro Rodriguez. But there's no fire to extinguish, except the flame of a gallant and forlorn hope. After 22 hours of desperate struggle against overwhelming odds, the Ferrari, entered by the North American racing team, succumbs to the pace which its own drivers have set. But the little Mexicans, Pedro and Ricardo Rodriguez, have won the hearts of 250,000 spectators and the admiration of every motorsport enthusiast in the world. Sterling Moss knows how it feels to be beaten by misfortune, and Pedro realizes that he was making up enough time for it to have been just possible to win. But they're sportsmen as well as fighters, these brave little Mexicans, the Rodriguez brothers. The last of the Aston Martins. The French-entered DB4 of Kerguin was lying 9th when it finally joined John Ogier's Zagato Saloons and the open DBR1s of Clark and Salvadori on the retired list. But still, the number 25 Triumph smouldered on, and the moment of truth was at hand. While the mechanics did what they could, the time had come for strategy. Team manager and chief engineer confer, and Ken Richardson shoulders a heavy responsibility. At the Ferrari pit too, this is an anxious time. Olivier Gendebien may look debonair, but the waiting does not pass easily. Now in comes the leader for what should be his last pit stop of the race. Twice before, both Hill and Gendebien have won. Their responsibility now is almost overwhelming. And it's Phil Hill who carries on. The vast crowd counts the seconds to 4 o'clock. And there it is. 24 hours of concentrated motor racing history have passed. In the order that they finished, the 3 Triumphs crossed the line, the only complete team of 3 cars to do so. Phil Hill brings home the winning Ferrari with a record 2,782 miles in the 24 hours. Mike Parks and Meres are second, some 24 miles behind. But the poor little special delivery drivers are going to have a hard time getting through that lot. Keith Balisette is joined by the now immaculate Bolton. They finish 9th in the highest placed British car at 98.9 miles an hour for the 24. The gallant Les Leston, now suffering intense pain, is supported literally by his partner Slottermarker. They finish 11th at 97.1, and Mike Rothschild and Marcel Beccar are 15th in number 25, slowed but still easily qualified at 91.2 despite the broken oil seal. It's thumbs up all the way, and the international team of Triumph drivers, British, American, Dutch and French, have added a great achievement to their individual brilliant careers. The three Triumphs which came to Le Mans did exactly what was expected of them by achieving a target of speed and reliability unequaled in the race. This indeed was triumph at Le Mans.
Well, on the film of the 1961, we see the Rodriguez brothers, Ricardo and Pedro. They were very young, Mexican, and very, very fast. Their father had lots of money and wanted them to be racing drivers, and really probably got them started way too soon. In fact, I'm not sure it's 59 or 60, they went to Le Mans and the organisers wouldn't let them start because Ricardo was only like 17 or 18 and they said, no, you're too young to take part in the race. So this was not the first time that had been to Le Mans. And unfortunately, Ricardo was killed the very next year practicing in a Formula One car for the Mexican Grand Prix. And Pedro had always wanted to win Le Mans, which he did, at my expense, I might add, in 1968, when the race was run in September, not June, because of the French election. And he went on to have a very successful career. That was with the Gulf Wire, and he continued racing for Gulf and Wire for the next couple of years. Well, 1964 to me means Le Mans, and it means Spitfires at Le Mans. It was actually my third trip to the track. I drove there in 62 and 63. And in 1963, I drove a very hot car, the Lola GT prototype. But in 64, the factory, the Spitfire factory, Triumph factory, actually asked me to drive in their team, one of their cars in a team of three. And it was a big effort by Triumph. The Triumph Spitfire had come out. It was a little fastback car, you know, 1500cc engine, medium speed, typical English sports car, a bit rattly, a bit small, you know, not very fast compared to modern cars, but seemed pretty good on the day. But it somehow got a reputation as being a girl's car, and obviously the British macho couldn't have that. So Triumph spent a lot of money, you know, promoting and advertising the car. They raced it a lot in America in SCCA club racing. And they decided to enter a factory team at the Le Mans race that year. And one of the drivers was yours truly.
Early in race week, the caravans come rolling in from the speed shops of Europe and America. But to claim space in this paddock, a manufacturer must have unqualified confidence in his product. With an excellent record of past achievement in the race behind them, the standard Triumph team once again came to Le Mans. 3 Triumph Spitfires, with one of the new 2 litres as service car. Ray Henderson, chief mechanic, and John Lloyd, assistant chief engineer, well knew how demanding was the task which confronted them and their team. Long hours of patient research and development had gone into the preparation of the cars. High-port aluminium head, high-lift cam, increased compression ratio, special aerodynamic GT body in glass fiber and aluminium. An interesting and a genuine production prototype from which much could be learned. Different people come to Le Mans for different reasons, but the Spitfire's drivers reflect the essentially international atmosphere of the race. In motor racing, nothing is certain, but as far as their preparation was concerned, the Triumph team seemed to have things pretty well taped. Pit manager Lyndon Mills plays host to the Swiss distributor Pierre Blanc, while the group accountant, Mr. Boardman, maintains a watching brief. But the presiding genius and the chief engineer of this project in every sense was Harry Webster himself. Heading the drivers, one of the up-and-coming names in British racing, David Hobbs. Bob Tullius from the United States. From France, J.L. Manard, a newcomer to the Triumph team. And from Holland, Robbie Slottermacher, displaying an unusual taste in hats. And talking of hats, at Le Mans you can see just about everything. France was, as usual, represented by the smaller capacity cars. From Germany, a strong Porsche entry. All British, the Team Elite Lotus. Anglo-American, Carroll Shelby's AC Cobras. Old Timer, the E-Type Jaguar. Newcomer, the Sunbeam Tiger with the big American Ford V8 engine. But certainly the most publicized entry of them all, the 3 official works team cars from Ford America to challenge Ferrari. And Ferrari had no less than 144 pistons between them. In the pre-race personality parade, some faces may need a label. Not so the sad little figure of Pedro Rodriguez, now without his brother, nor that merry little American Richie Ginther. "5 minutes to go, and 55 drivers move to their marks. Number 20 there is Vaccarella, works Ferrari, but he's in trouble. Into the S's for the first time. It's the Ferraris of Rodriguez, Graham Hill, David Piper, and Mike Salmons-Aston. Near Park leads the Cobras from Sears. The Fords have made gentle starts, and Phil Hill is left on the line. Verrier CD points the tail. And back in the pit area, they've got about 3 minutes left to get themselves sorted out for the 24-hour vigil. Phil Hill gets the works Ford going at last, while Rodriguez leads Graham Hill and John Surtees, who's moved up, around Arnage. They're on tiptoe in the grandstands, on tenterhooks in the pits. And it's still the 3 Ferraris who lead, Rodriguez, Hill and Surtees flashing past the pits at over 150 miles an hour. But there's been a first lap spin and there's oil on the road. Second time at the S's, and now ploughing his way up through the field, Richie Ginther is 4th with the Ford. Still some anxiety. Is anyone missing? There's Hobbs with the leading Spitfire, lapping swiftly but without fireworks, exactly as planned. There's a very great deal at stake, and how many times have chances of success been thrown away by overexcitement in those hectic opening laps? Mike Rothschild with the 2nd Spitfire, and Manard with the 3rd. And already the first retirement. David Piper's North American racing team Ferrari with a burst oil filter. The French entered Lotus Elan was also in trouble. A cruel disappointment so early in the race. Meantime, Richie Ginther has fought his way to the front. Graham Hill, Surtees and Rodriguez now 4th. A ferocious battle for the early lead, with 1 Ford amongst the Ferraris. Increasing activity in the pits. The French entered Lotus Elan rejoins the struggle, but now the Alpines bring French racing blue into the one place the highly partisan crowd hates to see it. Streamlined lightness makes for speed on the straights, but you need reliability at Le Mans. Bob Tullius, off duty, watches as Masson rejoins. In the Triumph pit, all is well. Amongst the Ferraris, Vaccarella, number 20, has recovered from his poor start. And here, with the Alpines and Chris Lawrence's Deep Sanderson, David Hobbs is happy in his work. Mike Rothschild, too, is well in the groove. Behind Ginther, Surtees now leads Rodriguez and Graham Hill. Here's David Hobbs at the S's. And here's Bob Grossman's GT Ferrari, Manat on the third Spitfire, and Colin Davis's Porsche. Mike Park's Ferrari has been into the pits.
When they asked me to drive, I wasn't concerned the least bit because the general conception was it was a girl's car, because quite honestly, it had gone skidded right over my head. I mean, obviously this was something that the marketing department at Triumph knew more about. They obviously had got the idea that people thought it was a girl's car. It hadn't particularly occurred to me. And it would have been my first choice to drive at Le Mans, probably not. But the big deal was, you've got to remember, this was a factory that had asked me to drive. And, I went over there to the Triumph factory and met all the big wigs. Harry Webster was the chief designer. John Lloyd was running the team. I met both those guys. And I met their immediate bosses. So it was a big deal for me as a, whatever I was, 23, 24, to be able to drive for a factory. And so I was very happy, and there was, they paid some reasonable money. I can't remember what they paid, but to me at the time it was probably a fortune. And also you knew you were going to get it, unlike driving for a private owner. You might get it, you might not. And so I was very happy to drive for them.
The Alphas too have their problems. Here's Businello's Julius stopped too soon for the driver's peace of mind. But now the big cars are due in on schedule, and Dan Gurney's at the ready. The leader at the pits, but while Richie Ginther reports that all is well to Ford team manager John Wyer, the Ferraris rush past into the lead. No call for anxiety here. But on the circuit there is a crash on the very fast right-hander under the bridge, and it's Mike Rothschild. A dangerous place indeed to hit the bank, but fortunately the driver is not seriously hurt, thanks largely to the Spitfire's immensely strong structure. However, the car is virtually written off as a result of a touch with one of the big cars overtaking. The marshals are brave and efficient. A multiple accident is avoided. The race roars on. After 2¼ hours, the Spitfires make their first routine stop. As David Hobbs bails out, the mechanics take over. Drivers and team manager confer. Unhurried calm combined with split-second efficiency is the key to success at Le Mans, and the experienced Triumph team works well. The young Dutchman, Robbie Slottermacher, is a driver of great character, and here character and self-discipline are at a premium. Robbie soon settles down to lap as ordered at 4 minutes 58 seconds, 102 miles an hour, as regular as a clock. Graham Hill has retained the wheel and third place to Surtees and Ginther, whilst Guichet has taken number 20 over from Vaccarella and is close behind Paul. The young Frenchman Manat and Pio continue steadily with the second Spitfire, undismayed by all this drama. Innis Island's GT Ferrari is now ahead of Phil Hill's Ford, and it seems to be getting misty at Tertre Rouge. The mist becomes a positive fog. always a hazard at Le Mans. But by the time Noble came through, he must have regretted that radar was about the only equipment missing from his huge Issot Revolta. This, however, was no ordinary fog, just the Balasat Dubois Tiger convincing the other drivers that excessive smoking is a very undesirable habit. Meantime, Peter Proctor and Jimmy Bloomer kept the other Sunbeam breaking through their teammates' clouds. Richie Ginther and Maston Gregory struggled vainly to regain the lead for Ford. And at the famous Hippodrome Cafe, the experts sensed drama again. The Rodriguez Ferrari was out with a damaged cylinder head joint. Once again, an early pacemaker had no more to show for it than a temporary lap record at 131 miles an hour. As dusk crept towards the circuit, Ford hopes faded with the light. The Atwood-Schlesser car caught fire, and the Ginther-Gregory gearbox gave up. Both the privately entered Jaguars were in trouble, and while the crowd started to relax, the drivers settled down for the long, hard struggle of the hours of darkness. Some, perhaps, less calmly than others. The crowd woke to the news of the Ford defeat. The Hill McLaren gearbox had failed at 5 a.m. when they lay fourth. There were 3 Ferraris in the lead. The night, though fine, had taken a heavy toll. Peter Bolton's AC and Baghetti's Ferrari had left the road at speed, and the retirement total had reached 25 cars. Among them, the French-driven Spitfire, which had been eliminated when Mana crashed unconscious from fumes caused by previous damage in a spin. Meantime, the little MGB of Paddy Hopkirk and Andrew Hedges had run steadily on. And so too had the Spitfire of David Hobbs and Robbie Slaughtermarker. As Robbie reported to team manager Lyndon Mills, neither man nor the car showed much evidence of the fact that they had been racing now for 15 consecutive hours. So routine was the pit stop that Ray Henderson decided he had no need for his megaphone. But John Lloyd's face betrayed something of the tension as David Hobbs took over with 9 hours still to go. Now some strangely assorted struggles were breaking out. Biscaldi's Alpha, for instance, leading Noble's 5.5-litre Issot Revolta with the Belgian Ferrari about to pass. Amongst the Grand Touring cars, battle royal with the lone Gurney Bondurant Cobra number 5 holding off the pursuing Ferrari GTOs and having at 5 a.m. been third behind Surtees number 19 and Vaccarella number 20. The Spitfire's new close-ratio all-synchromesh gearbox was making light of its task, and the car was in fact faster on the straights than the previous 2-litre Triumphs of earlier Le Mans success. Throughout the race, the law is much in evidence. Even so, things seem to have a habit of disappearing, even apparently from the pit counter itself. But these boys are determined to miss nothing in the Alpine pit stop. I see you stand like greyhounds. But had Shakespeare seen that, he might have said gorillas. Isn't it astonishing how the legs somehow seem to stretch when you've had a bit of a lie down? The privately entered Dutch Porsche number 33 was now challenging its works colleagues in the class. And now here in the swerves of Indianapolis and Arnage is an opportunity to observe road holding characteristics. But the big moments come when the leading car pit stops. Vaccarella and Guichet have now got a stranglehold on the race with their 3.3-litre Ferrari prototype. Hill and Bonnier, with the similar Maranello-entered car, are 7 laps down. Surtees and Bandini have dropped back to third, but it's a Ferrari's benefit for the outright victory. However, Le Mans is much more than just one motor race. Only a big prototype of over 3 litres can possibly hope to complete the greatest distance in the 24 hours. The Triumph team were here to prove the Spitfire's speed and reliability to the world in the best way possible. And they were succeeding as the weary hours dragged on. Vaccarella and Guichet in the lead. Hill and Bonnier second, but now number 24, the Berlis Bianchi GT Ferrari, was trying desperately to catch Gurney's Cobra, leading the category and 4th overall. A Charlie Chaplin walk brings a touch of comedy to the Triumph pit, but this should be the last scheduled stop and the atmosphere is tense. The car looks all right, feels all right, smells all right, though David Hobbs doesn't seem to think so. This time their master's voice is heard, and Hobbs leaps eagerly and literally back into the race for the last time. If you want to know the time, ask a policeman, but here there's no need. When this lot march, there's 10 minutes left of the race. Lyndon Mills calculates they'll just get in 2 more laps. But each of these dying minutes can seem an hour long. And there he goes, and they've made it. 271 laps, 3,658.61 kilometers is the official distance. 2,273 miles at 94.7 miles an hour for 24 hours. A superb performance. To Vaccarella and Guichet, all honor for their victory. And of their second place, Graham Hill and Joe Bonnier may well be proud. France wins the handicap as usual, so everyone's happy. And Triumph are proud to be one of the 4 all-British cars to finish in the total of only 24 from the 55 who started. There's no need to ask for a smile, please, for the camera. For David Hobbs, Robbie Slaughtermarker, and the Triumph Spitfire have distinguished themselves.
I was fairly well known in that area, and so I guess they knew who I was, and they'd seen what I'd done, and they'd looked at my record, and I was just the right man for the job, local. And they had drivers from America, they had drivers from France, they had drivers from Holland, and they had an English driver, so I had a good international team, which is what you want for a race like Le Mans.